Rebel forces patrol the streets of Kabul as the campaign against the Taliban moves south. A mysterious rattle is heard just before American Airlines Flight 587 breaks apart. And a superpower agreement to cut nuclear arsenals. This is the CBS Morning News for Wednesday, November 14th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Melissa McDermott in this morning for Julie Chen. This morning, anti-Taliban forces appear to be closing in on the Taliban stronghold of Kandahar. And it now appears that the eastern city of Jalalabad is in rebel hands. Kimberly Dozier is in Islamabad, Pakistan with the latest. Kimberly, good morning.
Good morning, Melissa. There are unconfirmed reports that Jalalabad has fallen. It was the last major northern city held by the Taliban. Now, it's on the main road from the Afghan capital, Kabul, to Pakistan. I'm told Afghans there actually asked the Taliban to leave because they didn't want to get bombed anymore. Now, the anti-Taliban forces of the United Front say they hold 20% of Afghan territory. Though spokesmen insist they are not occupying the capital, they say they're merely policing the city with a lightly armed security force to keep the peace. People in Kabul have mostly greeted the opposition forces with cheering and celebration. UN officials also confirmed the troops did stop small-scale looting, and they said there's been no major violence or revenge killings. The United Front has also asked the United Nations and other Afghan factions to come to the capital to start debating the shape of a new post-Taliban administration. The top American envoy appointed to negotiate in Kabul is expected to arrive here in Islamabad this evening. But don't count the Taliban out just yet. In Kandahar in the south, we reached one defense official who said that he is regrouping his forces and preparing for a last stand. And we understand that the tribal leaders in the south are standing with them. The defections that rebel tribal leaders had predicted simply aren't happening as fast as expected. Melissa?
All right, Kimberly Dozier in Islamabad. Thank you, Kimberly. U.S. warplanes are flying in support of United Front troops, targeting retreating Taliban troops. Taliban leaders call the retreat a strategic move in preparation for a guerrilla war based in the mountains. David Martin reports.
A small number of American troops is in Kabul tonight as the Taliban retreat has turned into a rout. Thousands of troops either have been killed, have defected, or been taken prisoner. Britain's Prime Minister Blair summed it up.
The military strategy aimed at defeating the Taliban is clearly succeeding. They are in disarray and retreat.
The Taliban has been forced to give up an enormous amount of territory to the opposition forces.
Last Friday, the Northern Alliance controlled less than 15% of Afghanistan, and today they have forces in about half of the country.
As the Taliban troops try to retreat, they are being hounded by American jets, although the chaos on the ground has forced some aircraft to return to their carriers without dropping their weapons.
The trick is trying to differentiate between Taliban and other forces and other peoples that may be leaving those locations. And that's very, very difficult.
Teams of American commandos are now on the ground in southern Afghanistan hunting for Osama bin Laden. And Secretary Rumsfeld thinks the chances of finding him are going up.
To the extent that there are more opponents of the al-Qaeda and Taliban in more parts of the country, one would think more information will ultimately become available.
The U.S. wants to move food piled up in Uzbekistan into Afghanistan by opening up airfields at Mazar-e-Sharif and Kabul, an operation that would be carried out by an international force, including troops from Muslim countries. An international force is also urgently needed to keep Kabul from descending any further into chaos.
I believe that we can, therefore, make real progress towards the filling of the current power vacuum in Kabul, but we need a UN presence there as soon as possible.
And one more sign the Taliban is rapidly losing its grip on power. Fighting has broken out in the Taliban stronghold of Kandahar, and local tribesmen may actually have taken the airfield away from the Taliban. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
The swift turn of events in Afghanistan is a triumph for anti-Taliban forces, but it is still not a victory. As Byron Pitts reports, much of Afghanistan remains a danger zone.
The United Front is in control of much of Afghanistan, but be clear, they have not yet conquered it. There are still bands of Taliban soldiers roaming in central and northern Afghanistan. We passed some of their positions during our journey from Hocha Bahauddin. here to the United Front stronghold of Talakhan. It's a 4-hour trip, but it took us nearly 8 hours, in part because of the landmines left behind by the Taliban that litter the roadway. It's estimated there's still close to 70,000 landmines in northern Afghanistan alone. Add to that the bandits, the bad men on both sides taking advantage of these dangerous times. During our trip, our 19-year-old driver turned to me and asked, "Do you have a gun? Do any of you have a gun?" I smiled and said no. He turned back, rolled his eyes and said, "Then we must drive faster." In the 1980s, the Russians took control of all the major cities in Afghanistan and lost nearly 15,000 soldiers trying to defend them. In Afghanistan, wars are not won, they're endured. Byron Pitts, CBS News, Talakhan, Afghanistan.
Now to our other major story, the crash of American Airlines Flight 587. Investigators do not yet know what caused the Airbus A300 to go down shortly after takeoff. Evidence gathered so far seems to suggest mechanical failure. Bob Orr reports.
A preliminary inspection of the engines from American Airlines Flight 587 has revealed no sign of an in-flight engine explosion or of a catastrophic failure capable of tearing the jetliner apart. And the plane's cockpit voice recorder revealed no sounds loud enough to indicate either the explosion of an engine or a bomb. But the tape did capture 2 rattling noises, consistent with aircraft vibrations shortly after takeoff. The pilots discussed whether the rattles occurred when their plane flew through the wake of a larger Boeing 747 that had taken off just in front of them. In response, the pilots added power to the engines, and 19 seconds later, the plane crashed. But something caused the Airbus A300 to begin breaking up in the air. Both engines detached from the wings before the plane hit the ground, falling in separate spots several blocks away from the primary crash scene. And a half-mile from there, the jet's large vertical tail fin came down, intact and virtually unscratched in Jamaica Bay. It's that discovery that has stunned investigators, who now must consider the possibility that the destruction of the plane began in the back. The vertical tail is attached to the top of the fuselage with a series of large fittings or bolts. Engineers say it would likely take a wholesale structural failure, a sudden sideways movement of the jet, sabotage, or an explosive force to break off the fin. There is no known precedent. But veteran crash investigators say if the vertical stabilizer was the first failure on Flight 587, the aircraft may have been rocked by vibrations severe enough to knock the engines off the wings. Definitive clues could come from the flight data recorder, the plane's second black box recovered from the wreckage and flown to the NTSB's lab in Washington. The box should be able to finally rule in or out an engine problem, and may be able to pin down the critical question of what went wrong first on Flight 587.
Investigators say they can't understand how the plane broke up so quickly if no explosion was involved. The jet only flew for about 2 minutes to an altitude of 2,800 feet. And investigators say it did not fall with the kind of speed normally needed for large parts to break off. Bob Orr, CBS News, Washington.
Coming up on the CBS Morning News, Wall Street likes what it's hearing out of Afghanistan, and President Bush and Vladimir Putin pressing the fight against terrorism. But first, here's Dan Rather with a look ahead to tonight's CBS Evening News.
Tonight, a woman's life under the Taliban was a horror, but there are real fears it won't be much of any better under the next set of Afghan rulers. Tonight's CBS Evening News.
This portion of the CBS Morning News sponsored by JCPenny, stores, catalog, and .com. It's all inside.
Where is your mother?
At the JCPenny Saturday one-day only sale. Save 20 to 60% store-wide. Extra savings before noon. Don't worry, Dad, it's only one day.
It's all inside.
JCPenny.
Early Sunday morning, winter's day. They can smell the cinnamon, they're on their way.
We love grand cinnamon rolls from Pillsbury. They're not ordinary rolls, they're grand.
My heart to yours.
like only yesterday. When I started skating at 8 years old, I never thought I'd experience the thrill of winning a medal. With all the great memories has come another thing I thought I'd never experience, the pain of osteoarthritis.
Vioxx is here, a prescription medicine for osteoarthritis pain. With one little pill a day, Vioxx can provide powerful 24-hour relief. Vioxx specifically targets only the COX-2 enzyme, a key source of arthritis pain. People with allergic reactions such as asthma to aspirin or other arthritis medicines should not take Vioxx. In rare cases, serious stomach problems such as bleeding can occur without warning. Tell your doctor if you have liver or kidney problems. For more information, talk to your doctor about once daily Vioxx for the relief of osteoarthritis pain.
Perhaps my biggest victory is to be able to plan my day around my life instead of my pain.
Ask your doctor if Vioxx is right for you. Vioxx for everyday victories.
Russian President Vladimir Putin joins President Bush on his Texas ranch today. They began 3 days of meetings Tuesday in Washington, agreeing to deep nuclear weapons cuts. But events in Afghanistan also topped the agenda. John Roberts reports.
The United Front ignored a weekend plea from President Bush to stay out of Kabul, but Mr. Bush declared the alliance knows it cannot occupy the Afghan capital.
They must recognize that a future government must include representatives from all of Afghanistan.
Beginning a three-day summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin, Mr. Bush did indicate concern about troubling reports that the United Front was committing atrocities against the enemy, including these photographs showing rebels executing Taliban POWs.
We will continue to work with our Northern Alliance, with the Northern Alliance commanders to make sure they respect the human rights of the people that they're liberating.
Both leaders pledged to keep up the pressure on bin Laden and to work together to reduce the threat of biological, chemical, and nuclear weapons falling into the hands of terrorists. Outlining a new strategic relationship with Russia, President Bush announced he would cut America's long-range nuclear arsenal by 2/3. Putin said he would try to respond in kind, a move that could also reduce the threat of so-called loose nukes, says former Assistant Secretary of State Carl Linderfurth.
The security of Russia's nuclear weapons and material is directly linked to the United States' national security. If those things fall in the wrong hands, we are at risk.
The cuts to the U.S. arsenal are an enticement for Putin to sign on to the president's plans for missile defense. They will continue those discussions at the president's ranch in Texas, though we are told not to expect an agreement this week. John Roberts, CBS News, the White House.
Anti-nuclear protesters failed to stop a shipment of more than 80 tons of nuclear waste from reaching a storage dump in Germany. A convoy of trucks arrived this morning from a French plant. Germany sends its nuclear waste to England and France for reprocessing. Anti-nuclear activists fear the storage site will become permanent. A blue chip rally snapped a three-day losing streak for Japanese stocks overnight. The Nikkei Average closed up 56 points, or about 0.5%. On the CBS Market Watch, U.S. stocks surged behind the latest war news from Afghanistan. Alexis Christoforous has more on that.
A turning point in the war on terrorism proved to be a turning point for the stock market. Investors cheered news that Taliban lost the Afghan capital to the Northern Alliance, and that pushed stocks to their highest level in more than 2 months. The Dow rallied 196 points. The Nasdaq Composite climbed nearly 52. Retailers got a nice lift after Home Depot, Walmart, and Williams-Sonoma reported strong profits for their third quarter, suggesting the retail sector may have hit bottom. And buyers lined up in droves to get deals on airlines stocks 1 day after American Airlines Flight 587 crashed in New York, putting another knock on what was already an unstable sector. Investors took comfort in the fact that officials say the crash appears to be an accident and not an act of terrorism. But the troubles for the airline industry are far from over. Major carriers are trying to put off a $2 billion federal tax payment for a second time because air travel has failed to rebound to levels before September 11th. Keep your eye on oil stocks today. Crude oil rose 2% in the last session after the U.S. said it would buy oil to add to national reserves as protection against any disruption to supply. And later today, members of OPEC are scheduled to meet to talk about cutting production in order to boost prices. And Hewlett-Packard is back in the spotlight. The company has moved up its earnings release date. Hewlett-Packard will roll out its profit report after today's closing bell. Track all of the pre-market action at cbs.marketwatch.com. At the NASDAQ, I'm Alexis Christoforous in New York.
Coming up on the morning news, the Wednesday weather forecast, and in sports, Cleveland's Lamond Murray comes up big in the final minute against Minnesota.
Two ways to treat your skin to a facial.
$65, please.
Olay Daily Facials. Use it every day for a month, and it's just like your skin had a facial. Daily Facials from Olay. Love the skin you're in.
Pepto-Bismol. It's first aid for heartburn, diarrhea, nausea, indigestion, and upset stomachs.
It's time to get comfortable. Time to welcome your family home to the comfort of York. Time to enjoy the dependability and innovative features of a gas furnace or heat pump from York. And through December 15th, you can save on selected York home comfort systems with up to $300 cash back, or take advantage of special financing offers. York, because now it's time to get comfortable. Call 1-800-910-YORK for the dealer nearest you.
For sinus sufferers, it can start with a twinge, a signal your sinuses are going to be trouble. Don't let it happen. Take Sudafed at the first sign. Untreated sinus pressure can escalate to pain, but taking Sudafed at the first sign releases pressure so symptoms don't get worse.
The first sign of pressure. That's my signal.
Take non-drowsy Sudafed at the first sign.
And for nighttime sinus relief, try new Sudafed Sinus Nighttime.
Here's a look at the weather in some cities around the country. New York, mostly sunny and 60. Miami, partly cloudy, 81. Chicago, cloudy, but a mild 63. Denver, mostly cloudy, 61. And in Los Angeles, sunny and 75. Now here's a look at this morning's national forecast. The latest satellite picture shows clouds across the plains, Great Lakes, and New England. It's a stormy morning along the southeast coast and remains quite unsettled in the northwest. Later today, those gusty winds will continue to whip bands of heavy rain across the northwest, while it will be gray and damp around the southern plains. The southeast coastline is in for a rainy, windy day, but it's going to be nice and mild from the Midwest to the northeast coast. In the NBA, undefeated Minnesota got a surprise from 1-6 Cleveland Wednesday. Andre Miller sparked the Cavaliers with 29 points. The Timberwolves kept it close as Kevin Garnett dominated inside. But Lamond Murray's last-minute three-point play sealed a 107-103 Cleveland win. In Seattle, Phoenix took a late one-point lead on a clutch jump shot from Penny Hardaway. The Sonics could have won it at the buzzer, but Gary Payton missed a jumper, and the rebound was no good. Final score, Suns 92, Sonics 91. Other winners were the Nuggets, Spurs, Kings, Sixers, the Knicks, and the Nets. For the third straight year, Arizona's Randy Johnson won the National League Cy Young Award. The big unit had 372 strikeouts and won 21 games this season, plus 3 games in the World Series. Johnson also had the lowest earned run average in the majors. When Mark McGwire retired Sunday, he was just short of 600 career home runs. Only 3 players have hit that many. But in his first interview since retiring, McGwire says statistics aren't enough to keep him on the field.
I've never been like that. I never will be like that. I've told myself that when I came. I've seen players hang around too long.
McGwire says he's no longer good enough to satisfy his own expectations. When we return, another look at this morning's top stories. And the president approves military trials for suspected terrorists. But whose military will get them first?
Abner, we're rich.
We're rich?
It's our new litter. It's got diamonds in it.
You are mistaken, my friends. The diamonds are odor-absorbing crystals in new Tidy Cats Crystals Blend.
Whatever.
New Tidy Cats Crystals Blend.
Good. You always knew Campbell's was good. Now 9 of your favorites come ready to serve, including new cream of potato and chicken and stars. Just microwave and eat. Campbell's. Good.
Ions for hair. Ionic technology. Now, ions work for VS Sassoon. Switch them off or on. Ions dry hair fast. Leave it healthy, moisturized. No frizz, just shine. Let VS Ions work for you. The Ion Dryer, from VS Sassoon to you.
It's the return of Super Foreplay from Vacation Village. It's back, bigger and better than ever. You'll win extra cash with any 4 of a kind on our 100% payback video poker machines. The buck doesn't stop there. Vacation Village is giving away big buck bonuses on all suited blackjacks. Join our More for 4 club and you're on your way to the big time with extra cash bonuses on 4 of a kind. Be sure to check out Vacation Village's new and improved Cattleman's Chuckwagon Buffet, serving up all your favorite foods. Locals know the best place to play video poker. It's Vacation Village, where sunset meets the Strip.
Young volunteers bring something very special to our world. The vision of a brighter future. They don't volunteer to win awards. We think that makes them even more deserving. If you know middle or high school students who are doing award-winning volunteer work, encourage them to ask their school principal, Girl Scout leader, or 4-H leader how to apply for a Prudential Spirit of Community Award. Or call 1-888-450-9961. Because young volunteers have a winning spirit that we think is worth celebrating.
On the CBS Morning News, here's a look at today's weather. Gusty winds and heavy rain will continue to sweep across the Pacific Northwest, while it will also be rainy across the southern plains. It will be quite mild from the Midwest up to the East Coast. Here's another look at this morning's top stories. Rebel forces are patrolling the streets of Kabul this morning with Taliban troops in flight, chased by American warplanes. Rebel leaders say they're poised to take more Taliban positions. A rattling sound can be heard on the cockpit voice recorder of American Airlines Flight 587 before the jet came apart and crashed. The crew can be heard talking about turbulence. President Bush and Russian President Putin agreed to deep cuts in nuclear weapons. Putin joins the president on his Texas ranch later today. President Bush has signed an order that would allow accused terrorists to be tried in military, not criminal court. Targets include Osama bin Laden and his followers. Use of a special military tribunal is faster than a conventional court and can be done in secrecy. Critics say the trials would trample the rights of the accused. Anti-Taliban forces say Taliban leaders and Osama bin Laden will be tried as war criminals when they're captured. The United Front says the Taliban committed crimes against the people of Afghanistan. Coming up on the early show, the latest on the Taliban retreat, what's next for Afghanistan, and an update on the investigation into the crash of American Airlines Flight 587. I'm Melissa McDermott, and this is the CBS Morning News. Have a good morning.
That's why over 65% of all cavities happen in your back teeth. So Reach created the Backtooth brush. Introducing Reach Squeeze. Just squeeze it, and it reaches twice as far behind back teeth as an ordinary brush. See? Squeeze helps you reach all your back teeth, so you can help prevent cavities where they happen most. New Reach Squeeze, the Backtooth brush.
Grandma, can we go play?
Okay, but be careful.
We will.
Bye-bye. That is the senior dimensions lady. I would know her anywhere. Excuse me. Aren't you the senior dimensions lady? Yes, I am. James, I told you that was her. You might say we became members because of you. Then, of course, there's the fact that senior dimensions gives us all the coverage that we need.
And some of us need more coverage than others. That's it. No more nutrition classes for you.
Well, if you joined me more often in my nutrition and fitness classes, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Health education and wellness from Senior Dimensions. It's our way of taking preventive care one step further. Discover Senior Dimensions for quality, dependable care. And count on us to put your health back in capable hands. Yours. Take hold of your own health care. Call today to learn more about Senior Dimensions.
Many of the 260 victims of American Airlines Flight 587 were from the Dominican Republic. On Tuesday, their names were displayed at the airport in Santo Domingo. That's where relatives and family gathered to await information about their loved ones. Two New York City neighborhoods, miles apart, have been devastated by Tuesday's crash. Manhattan's Washington Heights section was home to dozens of passengers on the doomed plane. The other neighborhood, Bell Harbor in Queens, is where Flight 587 went down. Lee Cowan has our Eye on America report.
From fence post to fence post across a dozen backyards, it's hand-to-hand searching for evidence and clues buried in wreckage and rubble. Still smoldering debris sits soaking in jet fuel, with pieces of the plane even larger than the homes. The cleanup could take weeks, the emotional recovery even longer, especially for the neighbors who arrived here first.
I remember seeing him still in the main body of the fuselage, and I remember seeing people still in the seats, you know, and the bodies still where they hit, and it's kind of gruesome to see.
And it was then that two hard-hit and tight-knit neighborhoods began to unravel together. At least 69 of the passengers on board the doomed flight were from the Dominican Republic. Many of their families lived in this predominantly Dominican neighborhood in Manhattan. One of them was Felix Sanchez, a longtime New Yorker who thought he'd made it through the worst disaster of his life.
The day of the World Trade Center accident, Felix was on an assignment outside the building, and he escaped that tragedy, only to be hit by this one.
A sailor from the very same neighborhood had just returned on Saturday aboard the USS Enterprise. Ruben Rodriguez survived a tour overseas. He did not survive the trip home.
He feels his brother is a hero, quite frankly, that he served this country militarily.
Two neighborhoods, one city. Terrible ironies in a terrible time.
We have two beautiful communities in New York City that don't deserve this kind of grief. But the thing about them, you have to understand, these are two very strong communities with very strong religious faith.
A faith that in both communities has been tested more than once. Kevin Lunny was on his way to a funeral for a fellow firefighter killed in the World Trade Center when duty called again.
Since September 11th, anywhere you go, you ask, is your family okay? Because you don't know, because everybody in the city has been touched one way or another.
They are two neighborhoods adjusting to life suddenly so drastically different, in a city still struggling to heal. In Bell Harbor, New York, this is Lee Cowan for Eye on America.
And that's the CBS Morning News for this Wednesday. Coming up on The Early Show with Brian Gumbel and Jane Clayson, we'll have the latest on the Taliban retreat in Afghanistan. I'm Melissa McDermott. Thanks for joining us.
For news 24 hours a day, CBS.com on the internet and on our interactive partner, America Online, at keyword CBS News.
Experience you can trust. CBS News.